Well, thank you for inviting me here. I have to apologize for my voice. I'm like a relief pitcher. If you give me a couple of warm-up pitches, I'll be fine. So you just got to be patient. We're here to talk about baseball in the Berkshires. It's a fascinating history. If anybody's looked at just a little bit of it, it's crazy. But before we get into that, I got to tell you a quick story about John. John walks into our display in the Lee outlets, and he's looking around, and he says, I want you to come to Great Barrington, and I want it all. Now you got, wait a second. In Lee, we were in the old Dress Barn outlet store, 8,000 square feet. Now, my job was to take 8,000 square feet and try to stuff it into the Historical Society building. And I must admit, it's a little bit of a challenge, but we'll leave the answer up to you when you get there and take a look. So, Baseball in the Berkshires is a 501c3. A non-profit. We got together about 8 years ago and brought that organization together. Kevin Larkin was there. Derek Gentile was part of it too, along with Tom Daly and Jim Overmeyer. And we brought the organization together. And, whoops. Bottom one. Okay, oh my God, sorry. 1791, it's where it all started. The famous broken window law. That was the first mention of baseball in a government document. Yes, there had been other mention in Princeton, Dartmouth, but they said no ball playing. They didn't say baseball, and this document did. Whoops. So here's the document. It names quite a few ball games: wicket, cricket, baseball, bat-ball, football, cat-fives, whole bunch of ball games. Couldn't be played within 80 yards of the new town hall. The new town hall had windows, and they didn't want the windows broken. So, right away, Pittsfield jumped up and said, baseball was invented here. Here, right in Pittsfield. But baseball is one of those games that has evolved over history. We look at the pyramids and the hieroglyphics, the drawings on the wall, and what do we see? But a person with a stick and a ball. So we know that game's evolved. 1859 was the next day, the first college game between Amherst and Williams in Pittsfield, down North Street, just about where Maplewood meet. Dottie's Tea Room has a plaque in front commemorating this game. Now, there were two games being played, two sets of rules. We, here in Massachusetts, were playing by the Massachusetts rules, and this game was under those rules. The ball was thrown overhand. The ball was hit any direction you wanted, frontwards, backwards, sideways, it didn't matter. Also, you could take the ball and throw it at the person off the base. And if they caught them, they were out. Sort of like our kids' game of kickball. Now, obviously, the ball was a lot softer. The other game that was being played was by the Knickerbocker rules. And there, that game looked a lot more like our game of baseball today. However, the ball had to be pitched underhand. They didn't really want the pitcher involved in the game. It was sort of, they were mechanical. So the pitchers got a little bit upset because they wanted to be able to lift that arm up to put a spin on the ball. So the rule makers got together and said, okay, you can lift your arm, but no higher than your waist. So they were happy, but they really wanted to get it a little bit higher. So they took their pants and pulled them up higher. Now they could pitch this way. So that game had foul lines. Instead of it playing like Amerson Williams did, 1 out, side out, they had 3 outs. Made the game more interesting, they thought. Well, here's a diagram of Massachusetts rules. Notice the bases weren't really bases, but more like stakes. And where the batter stood was 30 feet from the sides and was in between, but they had 4 other, quote, bases. Final score was 73-32. There were a couple rumors going around. One is that the Massachusetts rules were new to Williams. They really didn't know what was going on. And the other one had a rumor that there was a blacksmith that was pitching for Amherst. So, as we get into a little bit of local history, a gentleman had a great-great-grandfather whose last name was Pierce. And he came forth with this bat that was awarded to his grandfather in 1869 for a game between the Old Elms and Warnoco. Now, anybody who doesn't know where the town of Warnoco is, the best way to describe it is when you're driving to Westfield on the turnpike, you hit that big bridge, right underneath is Warnoco. So Mr. Pierce scored quite a few runs that day and was awarded this bat that had a brass collar around it with the inscription. That bat now is at the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. The gentleman from Lee donated it to them. So here's that Old Elms team that Mr. Pierce played for, and they're playing their last game in 1892. So we have the Civil War in 1860s. And what we found is baseball exploded. It wasn't the fastest moving war of all of them. We didn't have too many jeeps and tanks to run around in. So what we found was that people were trying to pass time playing a game, and that game was baseball. So here is a list of all the town teams in Berkshire County between 1858 and 1880. We had 275 town teams during that span of time. And those 275 teams admittedly may have lasted only 1 or 2 years. But if you look, Great Barrington sits here with 9 of them. And you go up to Dalton and Clarksburg and Beckett and Ashley Falls and Adams, Hancock, Hinsdale, Lanesboro, Lee. Look at the teams in Lee. Lenox, Monterey, New Ashford, New Marlboro, North Adams. Notice the number of Pittsfield teams. And they had youngin' teams. Those were Little League teams. Richmond, Sandusfield, Sheffield, South Egremont, Windsor, Williamstown, West Stockbridge, and Stockbridge. Crazy times. Here we are in Sandusfield. Sheffield. Monterey. So, you know what's coming. We have to have our first professional team. 1877, Pittsfield had a professional team that played what was then thought of sort of a league one step above the professional league that was playing. And they played other town teams. They paid $25 to join this league. And the Pittsfields here are playing the Manchesters. We admit the names of the teams aren't very, I guess, imaginative. But they also played the Troy Haymakers. So I guess somebody finally woke up and called a team a different name. So we had a professional team in 1877 and 1878. Our next big thing happening in history for Berkshire County was Bob Pettit. No, not the basketball player. This guy was a baseball player, and he was from Williamstown. And he was playing for the Chicago White Stockings that later became the Chicago Cubs. No, not the Chicago White Sox. Just a little twist, I guess. And Mr. Pettit is the third one from your left on the top row. Nice mustache. And he was invited by Albert Spaulding to take a trip around the world in 1889. Now stop and think about a trip around the world. We all say, oh, that would be great. But wait, it's 1889. There's no jet planes taking you from place to place. You're going by steamship. And they play against an all-star team. Here they are in Egypt. Now, obviously, you know we couldn't get this close to a Sphinx, but they did. They're climbing all over it. It's 1889. So next, we come to Mr. Grant. Mr. Grant was born in Pittsfield and raised in Williamstown. And we believe he took a little side trip because his father died less than a year after he was born. and his mother was a Hoos. And the Hooses at that time lived in Dalton. If you've ever been to Dalton, you know there's a Hoos house there, which is a historical landmark because they think it was part of the Underground Railroad. So Mr. Grant went up to Williamstown, grew up, started playing for local baseball teams. The Independents were one of them. And he got a job up in Plattsburgh, New York, and started playing ball for them. His job was like a waiter or a bellhop. From Plattsburgh, he heard that Meriden, Connecticut had a team. And remember, think now, it's integrated baseball. It's not segregated baseball. So the team in Meriden collapsed. And he heard that Buffalo of the International League needed players. So that's where he went, to Buffalo. And he made a big splash. He was known as one of the greatest second basemen of the century. Good hitter, good runner, good fielder. Well, as the black players started to integrate this league, the complaints got back to the owners. The complaints mostly came from the white players, that they felt that their place was being taken by these black players. While he was playing second base, he needed wooden shin guards because the players were coming in spikes high. So he eventually left, and he joined a team called the Cuban Giants. The Cuban Giants, we see them playing all over Berkshire County. They're a barnstorming team, all people of color. And why in Berkshire County? Well, when one of your best players comes from Berkshire County, you're going to go up there. He knows the territory, everything. Well, one of the things that happened, the players playing for those Cuban Giants, they didn't sort of like the way the team was being run. So they broke away and they started a new team. That team was called the Cuban X-Giants. Now, the owner of the Cuban X-Giants went to North Adams. I wonder why he went to North Adams when Frank Grant was from Williamstown, and he asked the town fathers in 1898 if they would sponsor his team, let his team have their home base in North Adams. That's our fourth team, because in 1894, we had what were called the Pittsfield Colts. But they only lasted about a half a year, and they folded. So 1898, we had our fourth team. This is a plaque that if you go up to Spring Street in Williamstown, you'll see this plaque there for him. And he was elected into the National Baseball Hall of Fame in 2006. So here we have all the professional teams in Pittsfield, from Pittsfield, starting in 1877 with those two teams we talked about. We threw the Colts in there. They played in the New York State League. The Cuban ex-Giants played an independent schedule, and then in 1905, we tried it again. Now you gotta understand, even the Cuban Giants didn't last a whole year. They lasted to about July, and they found the attendance wasn't that great, and they left. Well, we had the Pittsfield Hillies in 1905, and guess what? We had sort of the same thing happening. Here we go all the way to 2011. The last professional team we had were the Pittsfield Colonials. The Suns are not a professional team. The Suns are a summer collegiate team. Those leagues are all around the country, even in Alaska. So getting back, we now look at Lenox in 1894 with a team. Pine Grove Park in Dalton. Notice in the back, what do they have? A grandstand, almost like Wacona Park back in those days. You know what, Bob? You got the wrong program on. You don't have the GB program on.
All right.
It's not going to have much Great Barrington stuff. You bet. Can you switch over?
I can try.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, Larry, I don't know if I sent it to you or not, but there's over 200 games by major black teams in this league in the county.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know where one of the fields was?
No.
Fairgrounds.
Is that right?
And the old Little League field, if you remember, would be a meadow. There was a huge grandstand on the third base side.
Our programs are almost the same, but obviously I tried to tune it into you guys a little bit. You got that other program. That's
I
okay.
know.
It's okay. We'll jump ahead and get into it.
That one was good, though.
So,
Great Barrington, is that what they? That one?
yeah. So, when we started investigating Black history, of course, we wanted to see if there was any women's history going on at this time. So I typed in, that's great, if you can get it, or we'll be set. So we typed in women's, and I had quite a few entries. And I said, how come there isn't more? Maybe there wasn't. And then, yes, that's fine, that's great. So then I typed in girls, and all of a sudden, the ocean opened up with all these entries. And a matter of fact, go. Okay. I gotta get a little closer. Got it. Keep going. So there's my Civil War picture. This is taken in a southern prison camp during the Civil War, and you can see they're playing the game of baseball. And then we just talked about that. And all the teams. almost there, folks. So, in 1879, Philadelphia had a traveling girls team, and they played against the New York traveling girls team. Notice the pants. They were called bloomers, right? So they were the bloomer girls. And the two teams in 1879 traveled to the metropolis of Pittsfield and played against each other. Now, some of the gentlemen went to watch the game. And the problem was that they started to cause a little bit of trouble because they didn't like women playing that game. So they went by the bench and said some things, and next thing you know, the police were called. The police got there and removed the guys. Well, that wasn't enough, because the next time they laid down in the baseline. So the women had to run around them, so of course the police were called again and removed them. But check out the hats here. So we get back, that's Lenox again, Pine Grove Park, we're caught up. So here's Stockbridge. The artillery is lumbering up. Back in the just about the turn of the century. So our next Hall of Famer we got to talk about is Happy Jack. Happy Jack Chesbrough from North Adams. So he played for the New York Highlanders. And in 1904, he started 51 games. He finished 48 of them. And he won 41 of them. I do not think that record is ever going to be broken. And Mr. Chesbrough was elected into the National Baseball Hall of Fame. There's his plaque from the Hall of Fame. Investigating further, in a book, in 1905, 2 baseball teams were formed at Miss Hall's school in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. The girls played in long pleated skirts with blouses and high collar. No doubt the outfits restricted movement and were hot on warm spring days. So I went and knocked on the door of Miss Hall's school and said, by any chance, do you have any pictures? And here we can see our young ladies playing in 1905 with the long skirts and the high-collared blouses and the hats, and check the boots out and the heels.
Looks like big copy.
However, those women found out they could use those skirts to their advantage by pulling the skirt out at the side, knocking down those line drives that the men would go flying for. They just stuck out the skirt, picked it up, threw that ball. So here we have a team of the young ladies. Obviously, Miss Hall's school doesn't look like it did in that picture, because in the 30s it burned down and was rebuilt with the brick building that you see. So now we have companies and places that you stop to go getting involved. This is Pinecroft in Lenox, Elm Court in Lenox, Now, if you think we weren't inclusive in baseball, check the gentleman sitting on the bench. He only has one arm, just like Jim Abbott, Pete Gray. So, what we have now are the hotels getting involved. A gentleman by the name of James Harrison had a job at Aspinwall, and he got the bellhops and the waiters together, and they formed a team. It was a black team, and they played teams from the Red Lion Inn, Heaton Hall. And this is the Aspinwall before it burned down to the ground. So back to Pittsfield, they tried again in 1913. The Electrics lasted a couple years. And we got to talk about Wacona Park. A little bit of heaven. Pittsfield's Wacona Park is baseball as it ought to be. That came out of Sports Illustrated. So, Wacona Park was built by George Burbank. George Burbank built it in 1892 and turned it over to the city in 1919. A picture of the bleachers. And in 1919, the Hillies won the Eastern League pennant. So we get to an interesting story here. One of Kevin's favorites here, Mr. Gary. 1921, he graduated from high school and had a full scholarship to go to Columbia University for football. He heard the New York Giants were having tryouts. So off he went in front of the great John McGraw. Lou hit ball after ball into the stands. McGraw told him to go to first base. He went to first base, and the first couple balls went right through his legs. McGraw said, "I got too many players that play like that. Get them out of here." So Lou was despondent, but trying to keep everything secret because his mom wanted him to go to college, not play a stupid game like baseball. So Mr. Gehrig went off and heard that the Hartford Senators were looking for players. He went to the Hartford Senators, but not as Lou Gehrig, as Lou Lewis. Now, why would he try to change his name or change his name? Because he's afraid he's going to lose his scholarship, and his mom's going to find out and pull him right off the team. So, of course, he plays for Hartford Senators. They're in the same league as Pittsfield, plays at Wacona Park, does pretty well, but just about that time, guess what? His coach from Columbia finds out, pulls him off the team. Now, what makes this story so interesting is Andy Coakley, the coach of Columbia, was a professional player for the Philadelphia A's, Connie Mack's Philadelphia A's. And what makes it so cotton-picking crazy is when he played for the A's, our buddy from West Stockbridge in Housatonic, Pete Noonan, was playing for him. They played together on the same team. How crazy is that? So Lou Gehrig gets pulled off. Coach calls all the teams in the Ivy League and he gets suspended for 1 year. So this picture says 1922, but he was suspended for that. 1923, he comes back, and now pitching for Columbia University, he pitches against what team? Guess. Williams College. He strikes out 16 batters, 17. And it's still a record today. 17 batters. Can you imagine? He lost 5-3. After that year, he gets signed by the Yankees. Now guess who their farm team is? Hartford Senators. And he goes back to Wacona Park, hits a home run out of Wacona Park into the Housatonic River, and now you know the truth about PCBs in the Housatonic River.
The day that he struck out those 17 batters
Yeah,
was the opening day of Yankee Stadium.
is that right? So, you notice that picture, Gary? Sure do. And we're going to Wacona Park any way we can, even by trolley. And as we well know, trolley was the way to go. So, showing more women, Pittsfield Trade School has a team. Elementary schools in Great Barrington, Bryant and Dewey. In the paper, 1920s, women's team from Dewey, girls team from Bryant, they play against each other, played teams in Lee. Almost every elementary school in the county had a girls' baseball team in dresses. So we have some black teams. The black teams in the county start just about the turn of the century. There's one paper report that talks about Dalton playing against Pittsfield for the county championship. Dalton won 2-1. However, if you go back and look at the census, there's not enough black families in Dalton to have a team. So how'd they do it? Well, you know what's going on in this county. All the mills are running. So people go to Dalton to work in a mill. They decide to play for that team instead of going back to the other, where they came from, or where they were residing, rather. Sorry. So here's our buddy, the Babe. And you all know, you probably know more stories than I do about him. Being at the Barrington Fair, being over at Wyandotte Country Club, firing after turkeys or deer in New Marlboro or Sandusfield or Copake, New York, or Millerton. All this area is filled with stories. Well, here he is up in North Adams in 1938 as the player coach for the Brooklyn Dodgers. Now you think he was probably barnstorming and he had a bunch of nobodies with him. Cookie Lavagetto, Kiki Kyler, Burley Grimes, the great spitball pitcher, was up there playing. It also said Leo DeRocher, but we understand he never made the trip. Here's the lineup sheet. Now you're going to say, did he hit a home run? Did he hit a home run? Well, you had a pitcher who just graduated from Drury High School who's throwing. You have this guy who everybody wants to hit a home run. They're both fighting each other. Pitcher's trying to strike him out, and the guy's trying to hit a home run, and it was a draw. He didn't strike him out, and Ruth didn't hit a home run. There he is, hanging out with his best friends there. So our next story is about Joe DiMaggio. Now, we all know where Berkshire Downs used to be, out by Hancock Shaker Village. Well, people were trying to get money, believe it or not, into a racetrack. So they were sort of entertaining Joe DiMaggio, entertaining him so much that they named a race after him, the Yankee Clipper. And here he is, presenting the trophy to the winning jockey. And somebody standing in for the owner was Mr. Norton from Housatonic, who caught almost every game there was in the 40s and 50s. Troy's Garage, another team. Now wait a second. We're talking about West Stockbridge. They're down the road there, and there's hardly anybody living there, maybe 1,000 people. So in '34, Garrett Troy starts Troy's Garage. He takes a lot of the high school grads and college kids to play. They do all right. Matter of fact, he says he won the Berkshire County League, although there's a big fight whether Lennox did or he did. So 35, he says, there's no way. I'm going to make sure I have the best team. So he reaches out a little bit further and he gets better college players. And that isn't good enough. He's going to get some outside teams. So he gets Connie Mack and his Philadelphia Athletics, not to go, he to go to Philadelphia, but Philadelphia go to West Stockbridge. All of a sudden, they got 3,000 people at the game. 3,000 people in West Stockbridge. We're all asking, how did they get there? They came any way they can, apparently. They also played that year, gotta remember, tell me, Captain, who else did they play?
They played the A's first, then they played the Philly, no. They played, all told, they played the A's, the Phillies, the Braves, and the Reds.
Okay, I think it was the Braves that year.
The Braves was, the Braves was the last.
And then the Phillies were the last year. So, they have, 31 home games that year. Their total home attendance was over 75,000 people. Can you? Kerosene Field, that was out Route 41. Before you get to the cemeteries, it's on your left. Kevin had made sure there was a plaque there commemorating it. So, it's just crazy stuff. And as we just spoke, in 41, he had the Bees and the Cincinnati Reds come in. They didn't beat them, but they didn't get beat 20-4. They got beat 8-1 or 7-3. It was a close game. Now, obviously, those teams weren't playing necessarily the best players, but still they were playing professional players. So here we have Wacona Park, 1946, and they're putting new lights up. By the way, Troy's garage had portable lights.
Before Fenway Park.
So here is the famous grandstands at Wacona Park, the year 1950. Now, if you did nothing to your car from 1950 to 2022, what would your car look like? So now you know why Wacona Park is looking to do something else or build a new one. But let's talk about teams. Here we have Pittsfield Brass Rail in 1949. Amateur team. They're so good, they decide to go to the national championship. And guess what? They win the national championship. In 1952, it's the Majestics that go and come back with the national championship. At the same time, Pittsfield's winning lots of Berkshire County championships. So, talk some minor league. One of everybody's favorite teams, the Pittsfield Red Sox. And on this team, you had Reggie Smith and George Scott. 69, they had the great Carlton Fisk. So, David Gunn, we all know the Guns. David Gunn, Ray Sr.'s father, became coach of Lenox High School baseball team. And a year later, he became the coach of the Lenox Prep School team. Now, here's Mike Alfonso, one of the greatest coaches in Great Barrington's history, Cyril's history. Football, baseball, basketball, championship after championship. We have another great baseball family in the Kinneys. Michael Kinney marries Mike Alfonso's daughter. His son is Kevin Kinney, who plays for Team USA. He has a son, John Kinney, who played for Columbia, and another son, Bobby Kinney, who's the coordinator of Major League Operations for the Tampa Bay Rays. He's in the dugout in uniform. What crazy stuff with baseball.
Anna Kinney was one of the best, if not the best, softball player in Berkshire County.
I'm sorry?
Anna Kinney
Yeah?
was probably the best softball player in Berkshire County. Ever.
Wow.
Good family.
There's Bobby. Of course, we have Mr. Consolati from Lee that had great, great teams there, baseball and football. And here's Joe Zavatero, Pittsfield High School grad, goes and gets drafted or ends up with the minor league Yankees, and then is coach up at Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts. I get tough saying that because I usually say North Adams State. But Drury High School wins state championship. The coach has some agreement to take a goodwill trip to Taiwan in 1979. 1979. So it's a trip of a lifetime, they said. On their way to Taiwan, they stop in California and go to Disneyland. On the way back, they stop in Hawaii. Talk about a trip of a lifetime. Pat Bassi, coach for American Legion teams. Kevin Standard won state championships with DeConnick. And our own Tom Hankey, winning Western Mass last year, Western Mass Coach of the Year. Cal Ripken League. We have kids from all over the county playing Cal Ripken. Even from Great Barrington, huh? They got great baseball players here? I think so. Minor league player Billy Hart, who Derek Gentile said he was probably one of the greatest athletes from Berkshire County. He ran track, played basketball, ended up playing for the Lenox Merchants. Great basketball player. In his later years, was a great tennis player. Brian House. Brian played for the Pittsfield Cubs, liked the area so much that he ended up living in Housatonic. Another great player, John Rafestanger, was in the Red Sox organization. Joe Bateman played 12 years of minor league baseball, was a pitcher. Gene Hermansky, one of the great friends of Jackie Robinson, was from Pittsfield. Dale Long from Cheshire. Mark Belanger from Cheshire moved to Lanesboro. When you lived in Lanesboro, you had a choice, go to Mount Greylock or to Pittsfield High School. And he chose Pittsfield High School. They said he was a better basketball player than a baseball player. Tom Green from Pittsfield. Turk Wendell from Dalton, showing off his animal tooth necklace. I'll tell you, one of the funny stories is that was told to me by a gentleman who was with our organization, Tom Daly. He went to school with Turk. And one day they wanted to go to Mount Greylock. And we won't mention what they wanted to do up at Mount Greylock, but anyway, they probably just climbed the tower. They said, stopped at his house and said, Mrs. Wendell, is Turk here? And she said, no. He said, down by the high school, practicing. And so they went down, and sure enough, there's Turk thrown to the backstop. And Tom said to him, hey, Turk, we're going to Mount Greylock. You want to come? He said, nah, I got practice. Ah, come on, Turk, we'll only be a little bit. Come on. No, I got to practice. He said, Turk, what do you think? You're going to be a major league player? And sure enough, turned out to be a major league player.
Tell the soccer story.
Soccer story. So, Turk is on my soccer team. And Turk was Turk. You know, I'm sorry. He comes out to practice the first day, shorts, t-shirt, spikes, and that's it. No shin guards, no socks. I said, Turk, you can't do that. You got to have socks and shin guards. He said, Coach, my family, they can't afford socks. I said, Turk, I know your mom, I know your dad. You're going to afford the socks. Get the socks. Next day he comes out, no socks. He's got shin guards. They're taped to his legs. So that year, we win the Western Mass Championship. And I turned to the assistant coach and I said, make sure the guys get on the bus. I got to call the Beckett Fire Department. So as we drive through Beckett, the fire department meets us, and then we travel on to Washington and on to Hinsdale and so forth. And he said, okay. So I get on the bus, and the kids are all noisy. Of course, they just won the championship. And I said, Coach, you got everybody? Yep, got everybody. Well, my son comes on the trip, or one of my sons would always come on the trip. And the guys were always fooling with him, shoving him under the seat or something like that. So all of a sudden, a voice from the back of the bus goes, hey, Coach, where's your son? I said, hey, guys, come on, get him out from underneath. Another voice comes out, hey, Coach, where's Turk? I go, where is Turk? I said, stop the bus. We look out the back window, and here's my son and Turk running after the bus. Turk says, Coach, I thought I was going to miss the fire engines. I had to be here. Nice guy. He's got a son that is pitching in the Diamondback system, and his daughter is a state trooper in Minnesota. Jeff Reardon, great relief pitcher. When relief pitchers weren't pitching one inning, they were pitching 2 and 3 innings. He broke Raleigh Fingers' save record. Rick Murphy was with the Cubs and the Mets and the Astros, Pittsfield Astros, and then he went to New York State, followed the Astros over there, and now he's the president of the Tri-City Valley Cats. Tri-City Valley Cats sort of got the job by MLB because they have an excellent facility and they're on a college campus, so they could put the minor league players up. But when Mr. Gladstone died, who happened to be the owner of the Tri-City Valley Cats and a big wig in baseball, when he died, they pulled him away from being a professional team. They are now an independent team. They're professional, independent. They play in the Frontier League, which is an independent baseball league. Dan Duquette from Dalton was GM of the Montreal Expos, the Boston Red Sox, and the Baltimore Orioles. Tom Mooney, who is a president of our organization, was a scout. And here he is signing Ken Griffey Jr., age 19. John Persip from Pittsfield was a caterer. So if you had a party in the 40s, you called John Persip. And he came and catered your event. But he also was an umpire, and he rode a bicycle to the baseball games he did. But he was such a good umpire, he was called to Albany to umpire the New York Black Yankee games of the Negro Leagues. So he was technically a major league umpire. Okay? This is Chris Conroy. He's from Williamstown, major league umpire. And somebody you all know, maybe or maybe not, Ed Ladley. And Ed Ladley is a good storyteller. And I guess that's what our organization is all about, is when you tell me the Roger Maris story, those are all the stories that make Berkshire County so special. Well, I was collecting stuff for the Dalton Collegians, and Gene Hermansky's cousin came to the house to give me some uniforms and so forth. And I said, before you leave, look at my list. Paul Hermansky, I just remembered. So he looked at the list and he said, yeah, you forgot Ed Ladley. I said, Ed Ladley? He's a basketball coach. Umpires baseball, things like that, but that's about it. He said, call him. So I called him. Ed said, Larry, in 1958, I graduated from St. Peter's Prep in Staten Island, New York. And the scout for the Brooklyn Dodgers came to my house and took me to Ebbets Field to play with this group of high school grads. We were called the Dodger rookie team. So he said, day after day, we went, we played games, it was great. And the best players at the end of the summer would get a contract to play for the Brooklyn Dodgers. So I said, wow, Ed, that's great. He says, yeah, but the night before they were going to hand the contracts out, I cut my pitching thumb in a kitchen accident. No contract. I go to Niagara, full boat for basketball and baseball. Gets chased by the Orioles and the Pirates, but he joins the armed services. So he doesn't play. Well, I said, Ed, do you have a glove, a pair of shoes, something to show me? He says, yeah, Larry, come on over to the house. I go over to the house, and he walks out with this. A 1957 Brooklyn Dodger home uniform. Now you say, where the hell did he get it? Well, where'd the Dodgers go in 57? Went to LA. So they have all these home uniforms. Who do they give them to but the Dodger rookie team that was playing during the summer? Now, the crazy part of it is, Ed has like 7 kids. They all wore it for Halloween. And look at the condition it's in. It's beautiful. So I get 5 minutes away from the house. My cell phone rings. It's his wife. She says, Larry, you gotta come back. You gotta come back. I found something in the back of the closet I never knew we had. A Dodger rookie jacket. I get a newsletter from the Hall of Fame, and what are they talking about? The Dodger rookie teams, along with the Yankee rookie teams and the Giant rookie teams. So I get on the horn and I say, do you have a Dodger rookie jacket? And they said, a what? I said, a Dodger rookie jacket. They said, we never knew they existed. So Ed's health was failing, and I said to Ed's family, do you think that you might want to donate that to the Baseball Hall of Fame? In the meantime, I took pictures and sent it to the Hall of Fame, and they have a committee that looks to see if they approve taking it. Well, they wanted it, and the family said, yes, we'd like to donate it. So we asked them if they would do a special ceremony. And here's Ed handing over his jacket to the Baseball Hall of Fame. We're talking 126,000 people in our county with maybe 2 good months to play America's game, my America's game, baseball. How do these things happen? It's just crazy stuff. Make sure you come to our exhibit that's in the Historical Society and Museum just down the road. We're doing another show after we leave in June. We go to Ventfort Hall in Lenox, and we'll be there for July, August, and September. And there, with the house is a little bit bigger than the Historical Society. So there'll be a different exhibit, that exhibit there is called Breaking Windows and Breaking Barriers, because our men and women definitely have broken barriers. Thank you very much. Questions? Any questions? Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. You can see the passion, right? I mean, you can just feel it. Something happened recently that I'm hoping happens a lot. I don't know if anybody knows Doug Logan. Doug Logan is a longtime resident here in town. He came in and visited the display this week, and he starts telling the story of his experience back in, what was it, 1946?
Yep.
He was a member of the Yankees minor league team, Binghamton. And he just lit up. I mean, it was just the opportunity to just share his experiences because he was moved by the display. I'm hoping that happens over and over again at the display. So please, make it a point to come. Larry's worked extremely hard to give us a good look at Berkshire County, and especially Great Barrington, and the field of baseball. So thank you, Larry. Appreciate it very much. Thank you all for coming. There's refreshments in the back. Enjoy.